Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're going to unpack something that affects literally almost every single business on the planet. Every organization loves to talk about growth. We build strategies around it, we forecast it, we celebrate it. But far fewer people talk about the silent force that is actively dragging it down. Today, we're going to expose the hidden costs of organizational inertia, this deeply embedded, invisible tax that's just quietly draining resources and stalling your most critical initiatives.
So let's just start with a million-dollar question, and it's one every leader needs to honestly ask themselves. What is the most expensive thing in your organization? Really, think about it for a second. If you look at a balance sheet, you might immediately think it's your payroll, or maybe you think it's that massive multi-million-dollar transformation program that totally failed to deliver on its promises. Or perhaps you think it's legacy software. But what if I told you the real answer isn't headcount? It isn't even those failed programs. The true cost is something far less obvious and infinitely more dangerous.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down today. First, the invisible growth tax. Second, unmasking decision latency. Third, structural and cultural roots. And finally, building decision speed. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The invisible growth tax and the truth about technical debt.
We really need to pivot away from the traditional view here. When most people hear the phrase technical debt, they immediately think it's just an IT problem, right? They picture legacy servers crashing or developers complaining about messy code. But that completely misses the real threat. Technical debt is actually a commercial barrier. It's a silent tax on every single growth initiative you have. Think about it. Because of it, launching a new product takes way longer. Adapting to market changes, incredibly difficult. Your customer journeys get completely fragmented, and all the while your operating costs just keep inflating. The tricky part is, this tax is totally invisible. It rarely shows up as a neat little line item on a financial statement, but it is absolutely devouring your resources and severely limiting your flexibility.
And this brings us to a massive trap that leadership teams fall into over and over again. Most organizations absolutely obsess over the upfront cost of modernization. They constantly ask, can we afford to fix this? But they completely fail to calculate the cost of delay. They just aren't looking at the compounding growth they're sacrificing by simply waiting. Seriously, the bigger financial hit almost always sits in the cost of delay. Technical debt is a business problem with massive financial consequences. So the real question you've got to ask is, how is your organization measuring that cost of delay?
Moving on to Section 2, Unmasking Decision Latency, the Ultimate Value Destroyer. Okay, so as expensive as technical debt is, there's actually a hidden force inside your operations that is even worse. The true, ultimate value destroyer in your business comes down to this one concept right here, decision latency. What is it? Well, it's the time gap between when a decision desperately needs to be made and when it actually gets made. I really want to give this some serious weight because it is literally one of the most consistent destroyers of program value out there. Hands down, the most expensive thing in most organizations isn't tech debt, it's slow decisions. So why do smart leaders miss this? Well, because decision latency is essentially a ghost. It's one of the least visible metrics in any business. You are never going to see it on a risk register, usually because nobody has bothered to frame it as a risk. You won't spot it in your budget variance reports either. And that's because the cost of this latency is paid in opportunity and time, not direct visible capital expenditure. It just slips right through the cracks.
Instead of showing up on a spreadsheet, this latency hides in plain sight through what we call the language of inertia. We all know these phrases, right? They sound so incredibly polite and professional. Awaiting sign-off, pending approval, to be confirmed, or my personal favorite, in discussion with stakeholders, which, let's be honest, is usually just corporate code for a 20-person email chain where absolutely nothing is happening. We read these updates, we nod along, but what they're actually doing is camouflaging stalled progress. Every single one of those phrases represents a decision that urgently needed to be made and just wasn't. And behind those polite little phrases, there's a destructive, step-by-step domino effect happening in the real world. Because that one decision is delayed, somewhere in your program, a team is moving forward and building the entirely wrong thing. Or they're burning precious budget on a dependency that might not even pan out. And honestly, perhaps the most damaging part of all, your top talent starts losing faith in leadership. The damage is profound, and it is happening right beneath the surface, every single day.
All right, Section 3, Structural and Cultural Roots, Diagnosing the Inertia.
Look, it's one thing to recognize the symptoms of technical debt and decision latency, but if we actually want to fix this,
We have to identify exactly why this inertia happens in the first place. And the causes basically fall into two camps that combine to totally freeze progress: structural bottlenecks and the cultural shield. Let's break down how these two things work together to slow your business down to an absolute crawl.
On the structural side, the root causes are usually buried deep in organizational bloat. You've got approval thresholds that force every single major decision to be routed through an executive whose calendar literally has zero white space. Then, you've got these governance forums that only meet once a month, even though the projects desperately need weekly or even daily decisions. And don't even get me started on those bloated racy matrices. You know, the charts that say exactly who is responsible and who is accountable, but somehow only manage to create this bizarre bystander paralysis where absolutely no one actually acts. But sometimes, and frankly, this is more often than most leaders are comfortable admitting, the cause is entirely cultural. In environments driven by a culture of fear, a really dangerous mindset takes hold. In these types of organizations, making a decision and being wrong is penalized way more harshly than making no decision at all and just watching a program drift. Think about that. Inertia, just doing nothing, literally becomes a survival strategy for your employees.
Which brings us to Section 4, Building Decision Speed, the competitive advantage.
So how on earth do we fix it? Well, here is the pragmatic cure. If organizational inertia is the ultimate value destroyer, then speed of decision is a genuine, massive competitive advantage. The fastest organizations, the ones that are truly crushing it out there, they aren't the ones with the most resources, the deepest pockets, or the tightest governance frameworks. No way. They achieve incredible velocity because they prioritize rhythm over resources. They fundamentally built decision-making directly into the daily rhythm of delivery, rather than treating it like some administrative interruption to the work. For them, speed is a daily habit, not a special event.
So I want to leave you with this final, stark challenge to take straight back to your leadership team. I want you to think about your own operations, your own projects, and your own culture. How long does the decision actually take in your organization? From the exact moment it's needed to the moment it is finally made. And more importantly, what is that number truly costing you? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this gives you a powerful new lens to examine your organization's true barriers to growth.